Okay, good morning, everybody. Jim Lapointe here with Colden Company. We're going to go ahead and get started here. We're going to go ahead and pull back the curtain here, literally and figuratively, and talk about how businesses can utilize Microsoft Copilot agents. So just a reminder that all of our attendees today are in listen-only mode right now. There is a Q&A button in Teams that you can use to ask questions. Since I'm flying solo here this morning, I'll get to the questions at the end of the presentation. So my challenge today is going to keep this to a half an hour here. AI and Copilot in particular are of interest to me. I could go on and on about it here, but I'm going to do my best to keep things to 30 minutes here. But we're going to be focusing today on Copilot agents in particular. So it's important to know what this is not. It's not Copilot training. And how to use Copilot itself. Although we do offer that. If you're a Colden Company customer, we're happy to do Copilot training for your folks. But we're going to be focusing on agents because I feel that's where a lot of value is, and we'll hopefully make that case for you today here. We're definitely encouraging people to get started on their AI journey. I do believe that artificial intelligence is a transformative technology, one of the bigger technology inventions since the internet, in my opinion. But there's a lot happening, right? It's evolving very quickly. There's a lot of tools out there. And as a business, it's sometimes really difficult to know, how do I get started? What tools should I be using? There's so many tools out there. So that's why today we're going to be focusing on Copilot agents, because I believe that that's a tool that has some value for business and also can be delivered securely, which is an important point in today's world here. Okay, just quickly a little slide about us. There's some folks on the webinar today that are not current Colden Company customers here. First of all, my contact information is at the bottom of that slide there. Always feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Happy to always chat. We are a managed services provider. Been in business for over 20 years. And we're not just any managed services provider, we're an award-winning managed services provider. So that's something that we're pretty proud of. There's an independent organization that evaluates IT companies across the world. There's something like 40,000 IT companies in the United States alone. But this is a global competition where they evaluate your service offerings, your tool sets, business processes, finances, and more. So there's a lot that's being evaluated there, and we're proud to be 6-time winners of that. And we're also cybersecurity experts. So everything we do here at Colden Company, we do with an eye on cybersecurity. But enough about us. Let's go ahead and get into our agenda here. So what we're going to be covering here is just very quickly making sure we're all on the same page of what is an AI agent. Then we're going to talk about the differences between generative AI and agentic AI. They both have value. Talk about the pitfalls of some of the free Gen AI tools and why you may not want your folks to be using them. And then we're going to make the case for Copilot, in particular Copilot agents here. In section 4 here, it says the Copilot family. It's important to note that Copilot is more than just one thing. There's a lot of different versions of Copilot. We're going to make sure we're clear on what those things are. Then we'll talk about the benefits of Copilot agents and, of course, the security and governance. That's a big component of it. And finally, accuracy. Now, we've all asked an AI product a question and gotten a response that we knew was wrong, right? There are ways that we can create our agents to reduce or even eliminate that. So we'll talk about how we do that as our final step here. Okay. First of all, what is an AI agent? It's essentially software that perceives context, reasons through a goal, and takes action. Ideally, not just generates a response. And that's really the point there, is that's the difference between generative AI and agentic AI. Generative AI, you ask it a question, it generates a response. With agentic AI, it's actually doing tasks for you. So there's a lot of extra value there in agentic AI for business. Now, certainly generative AI has value too. Now, you can think of that as like a chat GPT. It's great for writing and rewriting marketing content. It's great for fixing up those emails and making them sound better, right? So there's definitely value in generative AI. But agentic AI, I think, has exponential value because of the fact that it can complete tasks. So if we're being honest about things, and we might as well be, Copilot hasn't been really great about that. But has the ability to do actions, and it's better at some than others. It's great at creating PowerPoint presentations. It's not great at some other tasks. You may have heard of some other tools like Claude Code or Claude Cowork. OpenClaude's another one. Those things are honestly a little bit better about taking actions, but there's some security issues with those tools that we need to take into consideration. With Microsoft Copilot Agents, although it may not be great in and of itself at taking actions, you can couple that with tools like Power Automate from Microsoft. We're staying within the Microsoft ecosystem here. Power Automate is designed to take actions. And what's great about Copilot Agents is you can call Power Automate flows that actually take action and have a lot better success. Now, when I created this PowerPoint presentation just a week ago, there was another product that was not yet available called Copilot Cowork. Microsoft just released that for general consumption this week. What Cowork is designed to do is make that action taking easier to do so that you don't need to call Power Automate to do some of these actions here. So we're really excited about that because I think that's going to really be a boost in productivity when we get to Copilot Cowork. So we actually have a meeting on Monday with our Microsoft rep to see how we can get access to that so we can start testing it out for you guys here. But that's really where we see a lot of the value here. In today's markets, it's really competitive out there. So if you can have an agent improving your efficiency and productivity, there's real value there. Okay, we also want to touch on some of the pitfalls of using some of the free generative AI tools. I'm talking about your Chat GPTs and Groks and Geminis and things like that. They're very convenient and they're very good at certain things, but there is some risk involved with that. And the number one concern here is data leakage. Most of these free tools are going to absorb whatever you're typing in and make it part of its learning model. So essentially, let's say you've got an employee that takes some company information, maybe it's a company proposal as an example, uploads it into ChatGPT and says, hey, I want you to pretty up this proposal. It'll do it, but it's going to absorb that proposal into its data set. So someone else can come along and say, hey, let me see some sample proposals in this industry, maybe it's your industry, that can get pulled up in their response. So that data leakage is something you should be concerned about. That's why it's very important for all organizations to have a documented AI policy. What is acceptable use of AI engines and AI tools at your business? Do you want them using free tools? Are you a business that's bound by certain compliance where that may be a violation, right? So for your organization, I would recommend sitting down and developing that policy. What tools do you want them to use? Do you want to keep them away from the free tools and more towards paid tools, whether it's Copilot or not? But having that written and documented AI policy as part of a company handbook that your employees can sign off on or at least be aware of is important. Now, the next step beyond that is, of course, enforcing that. There are ways you can block things like the free ChatGPT if you don't want your people using it. The second bullet point here, as we make the case for Copilot, is there's no identity context in the free tool. So you're not signing in. It doesn't know who you are. It doesn't remember things that you like and your preferences, what you sound like. So it doesn't have that ability to retain that context, identity context information. Number three, inconsistent accuracy. Most of these tools are just scouring the internet for information. Not a newsflash here, I'm sure, but not everything on the internet is true. So sometimes it's going to pick stuff off the internet that's not true and return that as truth when it's really not. So again, we've all come across that where we've asked questions of these AI engines and gotten information that we just knew was not correct. And we've kind of talked about this already on the security side of things. A lot of these free tools are not going to be compliant if you have any regulatory compliance that you need to worry about here. So that brings us to Copilot. And first of all, we need to define what exactly is Copilot, because it is not just one thing here. There is something called Copilot Chat, and that's Microsoft's free version of Copilot. And guess what? It has the same limitations as all the others. It's going to ingest your information, make it part of its data set. So it's going to have those same concerns using the free Copilot as you would any of the other free engines. But it is generally available at copilot.microsoft.com. You can ask it questions and it'll work much in the same manner as a ChatGPT or a Perplexity of any of those other tools. But getting beyond that, I'm going to lump these middle two together, Copilot for Microsoft 365 and Copilot for Business. From a functionality standpoint, these are the paid subscriptions. There's really no difference between the two. There's one big difference, and that's price. The Copilot for Business is designed for smaller organizations, under 300 users. It has the exact same functionality as Copilot for 365. It just runs essentially on top of an existing Microsoft license. So if you have a business premium or a business standard or even a business basic, you can procure the Copilot for Business at a lesser cost and get the exact same functionality as Copilot for Microsoft 365. So if you're a Colden customer on today's webinar, if you're looking for Copilot, let us help you procure that. Make sure we get the one that saves you about $8 a month to go with the Copilot for Business. But what that gets you is beyond the free version is what Microsoft calls personal assistance. It's embedded inside of the applications that you're using day in and day out, embedded in Word, Excel, Outlook, Teams, PowerPoint. And as of this week, now in Planner. So Microsoft is continuing to roll out Copilot Assistance into its different products here. You also have the ability to create agents with these subscriptions. And again, that's where a lot of the value is going to come in here. But just keep in mind, with these two subscriptions, you're creating what are meant to be personal agents. Although you can share the agent with other people, they can only use it if they also have a Copilot license. And that agent is tied to the user. So if that user leaves the organization, that agent goes away with that user. You get access to some of the pre-built agents that Microsoft has developed and shared. There's two of them right now. One of them is called Researcher. As you can imagine what it's good at, it's using one of the large language models that does deeper research. Now, I use Researcher all the time in my role in sales. If I'm going to visit a prospect, as an example, I want to know everything I can about them. And I'll just ask it, hey, tell me about XYZ company. Who is their management team? How many locations do they have? How long have they been in business? Tell me about their business history, et cetera, et cetera. It'll come back and ask you if you want a long report or a short report. The short one is going to be about 5 pages. But even that will take 15 or 20 minutes to run because it's a deeper researching agent. But you'll be surprised at the kind of good information that it comes back with. So it helps me be prepared when I'm going into a sales meeting, having all that information at my fingertips. The second one that it's going to give you access to is an agent called Analyst, and that is designed to analyze Excel sheets. I just used Analyst a week or so ago. A customer was asking about where they're spending their money on tickets. I was able to take an Excel spreadsheet, kind of a dump of all of their tickets, and it asked it the question. It sorted it all nicely for me. So Analyst is great at Excel sheets and giving you trends and information on those sheets. Now, this fourth one here, Copilot Studio, we're going to spend some time on. Because a lot of people don't even realize that that is an option. But what Copilot Studio is, it's a place for organizations to centrally build and publish their own agents for the organization as a whole. Now, Copilot Studio does not cost anything in and of itself. It has a completely different model. So agents that are published, essentially you're paying for them by usage. So it's kind of like a water bill, right? The more water you use, the higher your water bill is. It's the same thing with Microsoft Azure cloud subscriptions. You pay by usage. However much you use it, that's what you get billed. So the way it works is they issue credits. So when you ask a published agent a question, it costs you 1 credit. When it answers, it costs you another credit. Those credits are essentially a penny a piece, so they're not very expensive. But if you're a larger organization, sometimes that can build up. I know here at Colden Company, our costs have been pretty minimal with the agents that we're rolling out and using. Certainly, we're getting our ROI on those. So Microsoft gives you some buckets. You can buy buckets of credits to use per month. There's a couple of different tiers there, but it's a different pricing model that you should be aware of. Now, CoWork is not on this slide here. It wasn't available a week ago when I built this presentation here, but CoWork is another add-on piece of Copilot here. It is going to be built much in the same way as Studio. So as you're using Microsoft CoWork, essentially when you ask it to do tasks, it's going to charge you credits. So you can do things like, hey, draft up an email to everyone in my organization. It's going to draft it and actually have it ready to send. So there's still what's called the human in the loop. It's not going to auto send it, but it's going to create it and have the send button sitting right there for you to approve and hit send on. Hey, find me a time where all of us in this department are available for a meeting next week and schedule the meeting. It'll go out there, scour those schedules, and actually build the meeting request and just wait for you to approve it and hit send. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to be able to do with CoWork as that comes out. Okay, some of the benefits of Copilot agents over some of the other tools that are out there, those consumer grade tools. I always like to say that ChatGPT is good for individuals, but Copilot is good for business. And here are some of the reasons why. It has native access to all of your Microsoft 365 data. If you want ChatGPT, as an example, to work up a proposal and make it look cleaner, as an example, you have to upload that into ChatGPT. And what happens if that base proposal changes, right? You've got to re-upload it. Not with Copilot. It has native access to all of your SharePoint files, your OneDrive files, Teams files, your email. If you change that file on the back end, your agent's automatically going to be picking up that new information. You don't have to open up any holes in your security. You don't have to do any integrations to allow Copilot to have access to your data. And that brings us to the second point here, is the security is already built in. It's going to follow the Microsoft 365 security that's already in place. So if you as a user don't have access to a particular SharePoint folder, as an example, the agent isn't going to have access to that either. It's going to respect the Microsoft permissions that are already there. Some of the third-party tools like Claude, as an example, they've built out their own security, but you've got to go through and configure it all and tell it, which folders you want to give access to, which ones you don't. And it's essentially bypassing the security that's already in place at the Microsoft tenant level here. So 2 big benefits of Copilot for businesses: that it's natively going to see your data, and it's going to respect the security permissions that are already in place. Number 3, Copilot gives you the choice of large language models. Now, years ago, I had my own ChatGPT account that I would sometimes use because I thought it gave me better answers, and it frankly did. But Copilot now gives you the choice of lots of different LLMs behind the scenes. If you like Claude, as an example, you can choose their Opus LLM. If you're a ChatGPT guy, the GPT models are all available. There's 4 or 5 of them available for Copilot. So I haven't used my ChatGPT account in a long time because I'm essentially using the same LLM in Copilot behind the scenes here. So that flexibility is a nice thing. And finally, it's respecting the security of your tenant. So the example I like to use is a third-party product called Read AI. A lot of people like that because it can summarize meetings for you in emails. Copilot can do that too. Sometimes people don't realize that Copilot can do that without creating a security hole. If you look at the permissions that Read AI wants to have, it wants access to all of your files and all of your data. So if you go ahead and approve that, you've just created a backdoor security risk to all of your data. So someone could compromise your Read AI account and then all of a sudden have access to all of your files and data. So with Copilot, it's all of that data is being kept inside your Microsoft tenant where we've got it secured without having to open up any of those holes. Okay, so as I mentioned, with a Copilot subscription, you can create your own agents, but those are meant to be for personal use. If you want to do things like looking at your own data and your own emails to do things, the personal agents inside of Copilot are great for that. If you want to have Copilot agents that are used for the entire company or an entire department, that's when you want to get into using Copilot Studio. That's a central repository for all of your company's agents where you can publish them out, and people that don't have Copilot licenses can still use those published agents here. And as I've noted here, it survives staff changes, right? So they're not tied to any particular user. They're going to be for the organization here. So Copilot Studio is where we've spent a lot of time here at Colden Company developing agents for our customers here. We're going to show you some examples of that in just a few minutes here. Okay, now when you're creating your Copilot agents, we want them to be accurate, right? And the way you do that is through these 2 things here. Number 1 is you determine your source of truth. You determine what's called the knowledge that that agent can look at. You don't necessarily want it out scouring the internet for information. You can narrow that down and say, hey, only look at the information in this SharePoint folder as an example, because that's trusted and vetted information that we know to be true. That way you know your agent is going to return good information and accurate information. And we're going to show you an example of that. We have something here at Colden Company. We have a technical library of fixes for computer problems that we've accumulated over the years. And we created an agent to query that data. Over 20 years, that SharePoint folder has gotten pretty large with a lot of stuff in there. And now we've got an agent that can query that. And we know it's going to return trusted and vetted results because we're determining that source of truth. The second part of that is your instruction set. And that's really the art to creating a good agent. You're telling the agent what its role is, what its boundaries are, what it can do and what it can't do. Believe it or not, you do have to tell it, don't make stuff up. If you don't tell it that, it will make stuff up. It's kind of crazy. But that's part of creating a good instruction set for your agent, is knowing how to build that set. And that's something that we're doing here at Colden Company here. Okay, once you've built your agent, you can deploy it in a couple of ways. If you're an organization that uses Microsoft Teams like we are here at Colden, great, let's put an agent in Teams. That's where we are working day in and day out. Let's make that agent prominent and available there. If you're an organization that's not a big Teams user, you can do it another way. You can create web links, shortcuts that are available in a web browser. So you want to choose the deployment method that best fits your organization. Choose the one that's going to get the most use so people can take advantage of that. So I've talked a lot about why Copilot agents are a good fit, but let's talk about what you can do with them. It's so open-ended, sometimes it's hard to imagine, what can I do with this agent? Let me give you some examples. Okay, here's 3 agents that we've delivered for customers of ours. So the first one here, we have a customer that is a nonprofit. They help people with medications and health issues. So they have volunteers that come in that answer the phone, but they're not experts. They're not experts on the medications. And what they would do, someone would call in, someone from the general public. The volunteer would have to take down their question. They have to go find someone in the organization that was an expert on that, get the answer, call that person back, and hope that they don't ask another question, because otherwise they'd have to do that same routine all over again. So what we did is we sat down with their experts. Let's get that information out of their head and documented. And we spent some time documenting the different types of medications, what insurance plans, and what things like GoodRx, where they might be able to get discounts, documented all of that stuff, and then created an agent that we published into Teams. So these volunteers could come in, and when someone calls in, they can type that question into this agent that's tapping into that knowledge of that expert, and they can give that person an answer right away. They're not having to stop and bother that expert, number one. And number two, they're giving better service to their participants because they're able to get them answers right away rather than having to track them down. Middle one here, customer of ours, HVAC company. They have a gigantic safety manual and also a hazardous materials manual. They wanted that information more easily accessible to their technicians that are out in the field. So they wanted this one available via a web link on phones, not necessarily inside of Teams. So we created a couple of different agents there, one to reference the safety manual and one to reference hazardous materials. If a guy's out in the field and, hey, I just spilled chlorine in my eye, they don't want to be thumbing through a 200-page manual to try to find out what to do. They want to be able to talk into their phone and get a vetted, approved response that they know they can trust. And the third one here, this company was also in the healthcare space here. We created an HR agent that had kind of some dual capabilities here. They have a company handbook. This is often a great place for companies to get started with agents. Create an agent that references that handbook so staff can ask questions and it'll query that handbook for answers. But this company had also done a really great job of documenting their business processes. They already had this stuff written down. It was just spread out in a lot of different places. So our agent is now querying those business process documents. Hey, which form do I need if I have this particular situation? Where do I get this form from? So their staff can now just ask the agent, which we published into Teams, their Teams users can ask it those business process questions and get reliable answers right away. So those are 3 examples. Here I'm going to show you how we're using agents here at Colden Company. So we are Teams users here. So if you've used Teams before, you can kind of see up at the top here, we've got all of our different staff members. You can chat with them. We've got a section for agents. You can chat with your agent just like you're chatting with another coworker. We've created 3 so far. We have a sales agent for our sales team to ask questions. We have our HR buddy, we called it, which references our employee manual. And then we created one called Andre 1000. That's our technical agent where our team can ask technical questions. And in this case, I'm asking it, hey, what was that command to silently remove software? It's going back and giving that vetted, approved response. If I were to plug that into Google as an example, I'd get a million different options. Some of them might work, some of them might not. In this case, it's returning the one that we've approved. So it's a real time saver for our guys. The screenshot on the right there is showing that this is also available on our phones. So if our guys are out at a customer site, they can ask those same questions and get those answers right away. So it's sometimes difficult to quantify what is the savings here, right? It's difficult, but what I can tell you is in our experience, for the amount that we're paying for these agents is really minimal. It's really been worth it for us to improve our efficiency and productivity here. Okay, so the point of this slide here is if you want to be creating agents that are available to your entire organization or department, you really want to be focused on Copilot Studio. That's the place where you're going to roll out agents for the entire organization, and we can help you get there if that is where you want to be here. All right, I'm going to wrap up because we're close to 9:30 here. Our takeaways, we really feel that agents are going to be game changers in terms of productivity, especially when the task creation really takes hold with tools like CoWork, really going to improve productivity and efficiency. It's only getting more competitive out there in our different markets, right? So the businesses that become more efficient and do more with less are going to be the ones that succeed. When you're looking and evaluating tools, you want to make sure you're doing it securely. Microsoft Copilot does that natively better than a lot of the other ones, which is why we recommend investigating the Copilot stack here. And then when you're creating your agents, there are ways to engineer accuracy so that you don't end up with those AI hallucinations that everybody talks about. And you want to deploy those agents where work already happens. If they're working in Teams, deploy it in Teams. If they're not, do it in the web. All right, my last slide here is think about what an agent can do for your business. There are so many possibilities. Oftentimes it's difficult to think, where do I get started here? But what questions can be answered by an agent? What can be automated? What business processes are you doing every day that are repetitive? Those things are prime for an agent to come in and help you with. My recommendation here is give that some thought and then pilot something. The HR agent is always a good place to start because it's easy and usually of some value to almost every business here. And then see what kind of use it's getting. Measure the results before scaling that out further here. So pilot projects are always a good idea. But it's my firm belief that businesses that embrace AI are going to outperform those that don't. So start slowly, but definitely get started, and we can be your partner for that. So I know I'm a couple minutes over here, but I am going to open it up to questions. The Q&A is active. I see some questions in there. So I'm going to go ahead and look at those and answer those. For those of you that want to drop off, feel free. Thank you for joining. Feel free to contact us with any questions that you have. All right, let me take a look at the Q&A portion here. First question was, can I use a Copilot agent to manage my email? And the short answer there is yes. The longer answer is, how do you do that, right? Because there's so many different tools. If you have a Copilot subscription, you can do a lot of email management right from the personal assistant that's inside of Outlook. So I would say start there. Copilot Studio is probably not the place for that because that's going to be more of a personal agent. But really, I think that when CoWork becomes available to everybody, that's where a lot of value is going to be found there. So I would start with using the Copilot personal assistant. You may run into some limitations of how far it can go in terms of doing tasks, and then move on to CoWork as the next step there. All right, next question is, would I be sent a video or transcript of this meeting? Yes, so if anybody wants the transcript, I'm going to have to trim out the beginning here, but I'll go ahead and do that and make that available. Just go ahead and shoot me an email if you want that link once we get that recording cleaned up. All right. What does it cost a company for Copilot Studio? $0. So I say that in terms of licensing. So realistically, there is some cost to getting it set up. So you have to set up what's called an Azure pay plan because they need to be able to bill you. So you've got some setup work to do in your tenant on the back end. It's usually a couple hours of work to get the back end set up. But Copilot Studio itself, no cost at all. As I mentioned, the usage billing will go into effect at that point. And then what you'll want to do is probably select one of their buckets. They've got some larger buckets. I think it's something like 4,000 credits a month, or there are smaller buckets. Actually, it's a larger bucket. It's a 25,000 credit that you get. And you actually get a discount if you go with the larger bucket. So you're paying essentially for 20,000 credits, but you're getting 25,000 credits for the price of 20,000. My opinion is for the typical small business, you don't need anywhere near that. That's a lot of queries. The smaller bucket would be more appropriate for most smaller businesses. What does a good first agent look like for most organizations? I mentioned the HR agent is a good place to start, but really, we'll sit down with you if you want. If anyone wants to have a business review and look at their business, look at what are some tasks that are ripe to have an agent come in and take advantage of. You can see with the sample agents that we did for 3 of our customers there, they're very different agents, but they all have unique needs. So it's about identifying those needs and then putting the agent in place to help there. All right, looks like we got one more question here, which is, what are the biggest data readiness gaps that block successful Copilot agent deployments? And boy, that's a great question. As I mentioned, Copilot has native access to all of your Microsoft 365 data. If the data is not in Microsoft 365, then it's not going to find it. So that's a gap, right? So for example, if you've got data that's sitting on your workstation or sitting on a server, it natively isn't going to see that like it would SharePoint data, OneDrive data, or Teams data. Now, there are ways around that. Microsoft has something called a graph connector that you could implement where you could make that connection so that Copilot can now see all the files that are on your server. But the availability of the data is one gap that we sometimes see. The other one is making sure that your permission structure and your security structure is in place. It's always good to do a review there to make sure that your SharePoint libraries, as an example, have the correct permissions before we go out deploying agents. You don't want people having access to information that they shouldn't have access to. So that data readiness is always a good first step to get folks using that. All right, we got one more that came in here. With Copilot Studio, can you set a budget either per person or per organization so that billing doesn't get out of hand? No. So with Copilot Cowork, the answer is yes. With Copilot Studio, there's no direct way to do it. The way you would do that is you can monitor usage and you can restrict usage of the agents by certain people, but it's not going to be as easy as it will be with Cowork. They kind of got the message with Cowork because that is something that a lot of businesses, I guess, didn't like about Studio. It wasn't easy to restrict that. It will be much easier with Cowork to do that. I hope I've answered all of your questions today. I know I've gone over a little bit, but thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it. If you have questions or want to talk more about Copilot agents, give us a call anytime. We're always happy to talk. Hope everybody has a great Friday and great weekend ahead. Thanks very much.